Hey guys, what's up? My name is Miguel, and today I'm going to be talking about the new iPhone 12 Pro. Now, I think most of us are pretty familiar with iPhone cameras, whether we use them or we are seeing them on Instagram. But still, it's always nice to test out the new cameras on the new phones. Before this, I was actually using a Pixel 2 as my phone slash camera when I'm not shooting on DSLRs or mirrorless. So I was actually really excited to test out the iPhone 12 Pro because one of the things about it is that it does have the three different lenses. It's got the wide, ultra wide, and also the 2x zoom lens. And between the different iPhones, there are a few differences. The iPhone 12 only has two lenses, the wide and the ultra wide. The 12 Pro has the three different lenses. The 12 Pro Max actually is a little bit different. It has a slightly bigger sensor, which means it's going to be better in low light. And it also has a different optical stabilizer, so it's going to be a little bit better for video as well. So I shoot fashion and portraits, so that's exactly what I wanted to do with this phone as well. So we got a really nice day in early November. It was really warm and sunny for some reason, so we wanted to take advantage. We ended up going to Chinatown because we knew that we would find some really cool spots to shoot. I took a look inside my brother's closet and I put together this outfit. First, we got this black t-shirt from Gap, and then on the bottom we have some white pants from Gap as well. On feet, we have some brown leather shoes, accessories from H&M, and some old stuff that we have lying around. And then we have this really cool thrifted jacket that my brother found. All right, so first I'm going to talk about the three different lenses on this camera, phone. So the first one that we got is the wide lens, and this is going to be the most popular one. It really is the most popular because it's the one that worked out for me most often. It's the one I kept on going back to. It's wide enough that you can get enough of the background in the shot along with your subject. But again, it's not going to be too wide either. It's not going to cause any type of weird distortion. So this one was the one that I kept on going back to. And as you can see, for example, on this first shot here, the one how my brother is standing in front of the graffiti here, I really like this one because this one kind of just shows you how sharp and how much detail is in the shot. So there's a lot going on in this photo, from the graffiti in the background to the bricks on the floor. You know, we got leaves, we got the texture on the clothing. So there's a lot, and it all looks very sharp as well. Now, the next one I'm going to talk about is the ultra wide lens. This one is really cool if you're trying to do something a little bit more fun and interesting. And it's also good if you're trying to get more of the environment, but it can be a little tricky because sometimes it can be a little too wide. We are photographing people here, so you got to be really careful not to give them any type of weird distortions that are not going to be flattering. You know, we got some photos here and it is a little bit trickier to shoot than the wide. You know, we have too much of the background in there. It's not really necessary. Again, if we're doing photos or fashion shoots, then we're really trying to focus on the person here. So sometimes it's just a little too wide. As you can see in this next one with the green background, the foreground or the bottom ends up taking up half of the frame, and it's just, it's just kind of tricky. So you really have to be careful. And then if we look at this one right here, when he's walking across a bridge, as you can see, his foot or his boot starts to look a little bit bigger. His body starts to compress a little bit down, making him look a little bit shorter and chubbier. And then his head kind of looks like Megamind right there. So really not flattering. You really got to be careful with this one, but it can still be used. You just got to be really careful about where you position them. So right here we found this railing. We tried it with the wide, the ultra wide, and the close-up lens, and I ended up liking this one the most. Again, part of the reason why you want to use the ultra wide is because you want to get a little bit of the background in the shot. And in this case, the background or the shadows on the floor was part of what made this shot really interesting. All right, and the third lens we got here is the 2x telephoto lens. And for portraits, I think it was cool. It was fine, but it didn't really do it too much for me. I think the problem with it is that whenever I shoot close-up portraits, I like to have a little bit more depth of field, and this lens just didn't really provide that for me. I have this example right here where I shot the same shot, but with the three different lenses. I have the ultra wide, the wide, and the close-up. And the close-up looks okay, but I think I like the wide one the most. And again, I think it just kind of goes back to not having enough depth of field, so it just looks too cluttered for me on the close-up. I did get some close-up shots that I do actually like. We got these on a different day when we were just testing out the cameras before, and yeah, I actually like these photos here. I think it just has to do with the background, just little separation from the subject to the background. And I think that's kind of how I created that depth of field. And I know this kind of brings up the point, well, what about portrait mode, right? Isn't that what it's for? And that kind of brings me to my things that I didn't like about the iPhone 12 Pro. Yeah, I've never been a big fan of portrait mode on phone cameras. It's not really specific to the iPhone 12 Pro. Again, I've just never been a fan of it in phone cameras in general. The edges on portrait mode just never really look good to me, and then also the bokeh or the blur just doesn't look that natural to me. Maybe I'm just used to the DSLR, but even when I'm just comparing the portrait mode photo to the non-portrait mode photo on the iPhone, I end up liking the non-portrait mode better. And I'll even just show some comparisons of photos that I've shot with the DSLR versus the portrait mode that I shot on the phone. And again, it's just a totally different look to me. So maybe it's just something that I can't get over, but yeah, I just never, not specific to the iPhone 12 Pro, I've just never been a big fan of portrait mode on the iPhone. I'm sure you can find some good portrait mode photos out there. I definitely, it's just practicing. I will say one thing about the portrait mode though is that it is pretty cool that you can change the different lighting effects. So for example, I have this shot that I did at night and I was able to change it over to the contour lighting mode. And it was a small change, but it really just put a whole light on his face. And again, we were shooting with no lights, just shooting in an alley. So it's really cool that you can kind of just do that in the phone. And sometimes it could really save your shot. So I'll kind of go back to some of these night shots in a little bit. But just I want to talk about the one other thing that I don't like about this phone is that if the sun is in front of you, you really get these nasty lens flares that kind of go right across the whole shot. I have a couple different examples here where I was really trying to make my own little lens hood just with my hand, and I could not get it to save my life here. It was just really impossible here. I was trying to get this shot of my brother walking down the stairs, and as you can see from my camera roll, I just took so many attempts, but I could never really quite get it. So yeah, just watch out if the sun is in front of you. Just make sure you don't get those lens flares. Sometimes they can be used creatively, but this one's kind of hard because they just go right across the whole screen. Now I want to talk about some of the things that I do really like about the iPhone 12 Pro. The first thing is the HDR. HDR just makes shooting in tough lighting situations very forgiving. When we were in Chinatown, it was the middle of the day, so the sun was very strong and the shadows were also very harsh. So, as you can see from the photos, I think it did a really good job. Again, HDR just kind of gives you that ability to take some shots that if I was shooting on a DSLR or a mirrorless, I would probably need some sort of lights or some modifiers to get the similar look. So if you're just kind of out and about and if you just have the phone, then yeah, you can always get a really good shot. The other thing that I really like about the iPhone 12 Pro is the night mode. It's not totally new, but what is different about this year is that the night mode is available in all three lenses, as opposed to the last generation when it was only available on the wide lens. I'm really impressed by the night mode. What it does is that it opens up the exposure for a little bit longer so you can get more light in the shots. I was afraid that I would get some shakiness or some blurriness from the photos in the long exposure mode or the night mode, but I didn't see any of that. So when we got the phone, we got a little excited and we went out at night and we got some shots here. All we did was go into an alley where we had a street light, and that's it. That's all we had for lighting. And as you can see from some of these night shots, there is plenty of light. And again, you don't get any of that shakiness or blurriness that you might expect from some long exposure shots. So all these came out very clean. Here we got a shot where a car was pulling up, and right before it left the alley, we decided to use that red light on him, just kind of give it a little bit more dramatic look. And again, kind of going back to talking about some of these portrait mode night shots, these ended up coming out really cool. And I think the reason why portrait mode ended up working on this one is because the background was already so blurry that it just ended up working out really nicely. So again, I used some of the contour lighting on some of these photos, which just made it look like I was actually shining a light on him, which again, I was not. It was all just the street light and the alley. So very impressed with night mode, very impressed with HDR. So yeah, very, very cool. Let's wrap up the video. I want to look at some of my favorite shots here from the day shooting in Chinatown. The iPhone 12 is definitely a capable camera, and some of these shots are my favorite, and I don't think it's necessarily because of the iPhone. I think it has to do more with the composition. For example, the one right here where he's sitting on the stairs, It's all because of the color contrast here and the stairs creating this leading line to my brother. I think that's what makes it a really good dramatic shot. Also, maybe the styling, the posing, you know, the model. You know, a picture is a combination of all those things. So, you know, it could be any one of those things, but definitely the composition in this shot here is what really did it. Yeah, so this one right here with the green background, you know, I think this was really cool. But again, just because it has a really interesting background, you know, when do you ever see a green wall like that? Never really. So I think that's what makes this photo look cool. We also got the yellow leaves on the ground, which give us some more interesting color, and that kind of goes along with this other shot here as well. As I was walking down the street here, I ended up seeing a whole bunch of leaves in the street, and I knew that that would look really good with the blue jacket that my brother was wearing. And again, it kind of just goes with color blocking, kind of recognizing the colors that you're wearing and then recognizing the color of the backdrop. Using some of the leaves, I kind of did this thing where I dropped some of the leaves in front of the camera, and it happened to land perfectly here. Well, it didn't land perfectly the first time. It took me like 100 tries, but I found the frame that kind of made a frame within a frame using the leaves here. It kind of puts my brother in the center, and even the trees, I was kind of using that as a frame as well. But again, that kind of just makes you draw the attention towards the model. And again, that's what fashion photography is, or that's what photography is, right? And whoops, I accidentally ran out of video there at the end, so I'm just gonna wrap up this video with a little bit of voiceover. I was just gonna talk about that last shot where my brother is sitting on the rail where you can see all the shadows, but we already talked about that shot, so I'll just go ahead and wrap up the video. My final thoughts on the iPhone: it's a great phone and it's a great camera as well. And I don't think that was too surprising for anybody, but this definitely gave me the confidence to know that even if I don't have my camera with me, the iPhone can definitely still take a really good photo.